bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the rad groups of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more. All featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL. From the great one to the next one. From the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of THW Oilers Overtime with the Hockey Writers. My name is Jim Parsons. As always, here with Colton Pankiw. Colton, how you doing?
Not too bad, Jim. Excited to get going.
Yeah, we before we came on air here, we were like, what are we going to talk about this week? Because there's not a ton of action for the Oilers. This is like a weird thing. They had like a huge homestand to start, then they had a bunch of games on the road, and they have like 2 games this week. So it's not a crazy busy time. We talked a little bit about Evander Kane last week on the show. We're going to talk a little bit about Jack Campbell today and the goaltending situation in Edmonton, because I think that's kind of a hot button topic. We do know now that Evander Kane is out for 3 to 4 months, and they probably would love to make a trade, but it's probably not all that realistic. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. So yeah, we'll just kind of mix it up this week and talk a few things. Where do you want to start? Should we start with the goaltending? Should we talk a little bit about Jack Campbell? Get the bad news out of the way, maybe?
Kind of conversation throughout Edmonton right now. I think there's some concern there for sure. So yeah, I think that's a good place to start.
Okay, well, let's do it. Let's you know what? Let's start with the comments that Wayne Gretzky made on the Sportsnet broadcast when Edmonton was playing Florida. He was in town, and he was saying during the intermission with Gene Principe and Bob Stauffer, which was, I think, the first time that Bob Stauffer's not said anything on any of those things. He was not necessarily speechless, but just didn't get a chance to say anything because Wayne Gretzky had a lot to say about the Oilers, and some of that was with the goaltending. He was really, really positive on Stuart Skinner, and he believes, and Keith Gretzky, his brother, who is the GM in Bakersfield, has seen Skinner very closely and for a lot of years, and he thinks he's the best player in the NHL or AHL, and was for the past couple of seasons. And Gretzky also said that Jack Campbell is going to figure it out, that we just need to be patient, give him time. When you move to a new city, you get a big contract, you move your family, you do all sorts of things. It just takes time. How much do you agree or disagree with that statement? Are you on the same train as Wayne Gretzky, where this is all going to work out and it's going to be just fine? Or are you worried with what you've seen so far with Jack Campbell?
I'm quite worried. I shouldn't say quite worried. I'm concerned though, because I think when they first signed him, I was quite hesitant. I kind of had always wanted him to go after Kemper in free agency. Obviously, he went to Washington instead for a bit more money, but the sample size wasn't really there for me, and the kind of inconsistency last season. Like, was he the guy in the first half, or was he just on a heater and kind of more of what we've seen in the second half in Toronto? So I wasn't sure what to expect this season. Obviously, I thought he'd be better than he has been this far, and he will get better than this. Like, he's a better goalie than what he's shown this far, but I'm not convinced he's necessarily cut out to be a 1A at the NHL level. So that concerns me. But the good news is, obviously, like you were talking about Skinner, and he's been incredible to start this season. So at least that kind of weighs it out a bit. And I mean, as bad as Campbell's been, he still has 6 wins in 10 starts. So it could be a lot worse. At least they're still able to get wins despite him not playing at his best this far.
Yeah, I would be more concerned if he's done nothing right. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's had some bad starts, and we can compare him to Mikko Koskinen or Mike Smith of the past, who have also had some really bad starts and just come in and crap the bed and whatever. And Jack Campbell has not played well in some of his games, but he's also played pretty good in some of his games. And he's shown signs that he can be a goalie that will get you the big stop at the big time and help you get a win here. So I would be more concerned if every game he played, he was not good. You know, it would kind of be like, oh man, what did they do? Like, they invested a lot of money and a lot of time into a goaltender that has not shown one time that he's got the goods, but that's not necessarily the case. I also will defend him and say the defense in front of him. Now, this is not just to excuse, he's let in some stinkers, but the defense has been pretty lousy. You know, it's not been helpful. They've been coughing things up. They've been given grade A chances against. They've been outshot. I don't know what the number is exactly. I'd have to look it up. But if he's, got 6 wins in 10 starts, I would have to assume that 7 or 8 of those games, the Oilers have been heavily outshot. Yeah. So that doesn't help, right? When you have that kind of You're making those stops. Everybody forgets the big stops he makes, and they just talk about the stinkers he lets in. So I think he's going to come around. I think it's probably going to take a minute. I don't know what's in his head and why it's not working for him here. I don't know enough about Jack Campbell to know if he's just not the starter that the Oilers were hoping he would be, or if he just doesn't have it right now and he could be that person. What happens? You talked about Stuart Skinner, and I agree, he's played great. What happens if Stuart Skinner continues to play well, Jack Campbell continues to struggle? I mean, it's clear that Skinner will be the guy you go to, but then what? What do you do with Campbell? Do you just accept that he's going to be your backup for a bit? Because you're going to have to give Skinner money at some point. So what do you do then? Right? Like, maybe we're talking too long-term thinking here, but what happens if Skinner is your guy and Campbell isn't?
Well, I think right now it's this season at least, like you kind of let it ride out. Obviously, if Campbell's continues to be this bad, which again, I don't think he will be. I think he's got like a 870 save percentage. So obviously that'll go up. But I think that's something you'd revisit more so in the off season. With Skinner, like you said, eventually at some point he is going to have to get paid. And I think that was kind of the concern with this Campbell deal at the beginning too, I think was maybe the term of it. But at the same time, like they needed to bring someone in. But to me, the thing that kind of worries me the most too about him is you heard things in Toronto about how he could be too hard on himself and kind of beat himself up after bad starts, and that the confidence level wasn't always as high as it should be for a goaltender at the NHL level. And that's the one kind of difference for me between him and Mike Smith is, yeah, Mike Smith could have some stinkers for games too, but you never really questioned his confidence level. It seemed like no matter what happened, he could go out there and make a huge save right after, or come back the next game after a bad start and have like a 30 save shutout. So I'm kind of worried about that, like the mental side with Campbell. But yeah, for right now at least, keep riding the hot hand. So keep going with Skinner. And then if it continues to be a problem with Campbell, it might have to be something they try and revisit in the offseason, though I'm not sure what exactly they'd be able to do at that point.
Yeah, that's a good point, because Mike Smith, for all of the faults that people threw on this guy, his short-term thinking was maybe the shortest in the NHL. Like, he literally would have a terrible game, and then you'd see him again, and it's like it never happened. He just completely shrugged it off, got rid of it, didn't let it fester, didn't let it bother him. And you're right, because there is a reputation here of Jack Campbell. There's a difference between when you say, okay, it's on me, I got to be better, it's my fault, and then you continue to let that linger and you let it affect you and you let it bother you and it affects future starts and things like that. I don't know enough about Campbell to see if that is going to be something he carries with him from game to game. Unlike Mike Smith, we'll see. Because if that is his MO, that's a problem, right? Because if he can't shake that and he has a hard time getting rid of it, unlike Mike Smith, I don't know. That's something that Gretzky talked about too, though, in his interview, was he said that having Stuart Skinner in the NHL and knowing he's staying in the NHL is going to be a huge thing for him, because he said something about Stuart Skinner being a little shaky, which is one of the reasons he went back down in previous years, which I don't know where he was getting that from, because Stuart Skinner always looked pretty good to me. Like, he didn't have very many starts, and he certainly wasn't going to be somebody that stuck in Edmonton. But there was a lot of people who were like, we should keep Stuart Skinner up here. He's looked pretty good. But you had Smith and you had Koskinen, so there wasn't really room for him. So I don't know where Gretzky got that from exactly, but what do you think when you're just thinking about Skinner and how mentally he's like, yeah, I'm on this team now. Like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, I could really suck, I'm still not going anywhere. And he's been good. So he's got to be getting more confident. Like, that's got to be growing every game, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps knowing that there's not someone right kind of at the back door just waiting. And as soon as you have one bad game, maybe go down. Like last year, when he got his biggest opportunity, it was when I believe Smith was hurt at the time. And then there was quite a few fans that when they sent him down thought that he was the best option of the three goaltenders. Obviously, just waivers and everything played a big part in that. But I think, not just knowing now that he doesn't have another guy right there that could just send him down to the minors at any point. He was the backup, and at this point kind of has an opportunity here to run with the starting role. So I think it's great for him. And I think the way he's played this far and last season, both in the NHL and the AHL, I think he's made it clear now that he is ready for this stage. And it'll be interesting to see kind of if he's able to keep up these numbers as the year goes on. But I do think that he's proving that at worst, he's a 1B at the NHL level right now. And I think he's still only 23. So there's a lot of untapped potential here. So I think.
Yeah, well, it sure sounds like Gretzky and some other people believe that this is going to be a pretty good goalie. He's got the ability to be a difference maker in the NHL. Wouldn't that be something for the Oilers if they had a guy who, they weren't really slotting in the next 2 or 3 seasons to be that big a deal, but turns out to be pretty good. I don't know. Is it official? As people watch this Wednesday night, the Oilers are playing. Is Stuart Skinner the starter, or is it going to Jack Campbell? Do we know?
Not that I've seen, but I would be quite shocked if it wasn't Skinner at this point. I think just how good he played in that Florida game and everything, and basically how good he's been really all season long. I think, yeah, he's got to be the guy you give it to.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you next. Like, who would you go with? Would you go with Skinner? Because there's been a lot of days off, right? So they've had some rest. They've had some time to practice. Campbell's probably had a few on-ice sessions to work out some of the stuff that might be bugging him. You'd go with Skinner, though?
Yeah, I would. And I know that's either a week or two ago, I kind of said the opposite, like with Campbell just being fresh and everything. But I think it's kind of it's a bit of a larger sample size than it is maybe a bit worrisome. And at this point, like, they got to get wins. I mean, they haven't had the best starts of the season. Like, there's some teams ahead of them in that division right now that they kind of have to at some point worry about catching up to. So I think right now just they'd be best off to ride the hot hand. If they had a better record, I might be saying different, but I think with where they are right now, they're best to go with Skinner.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I would go with Skinner. I think the Oilers haven't won enough games recently to take chances and hope that maybe Jack Campbell's got it. He could have a fantastic game if you put him in there. I think he's capable of it, but I think Skinner has proven that he's probably more of your right now go-to guy. So get the win, right? It's been some time off, pick up a win on a Wednesday and go from there. We'll see what happens. Okay, let's switch gears just a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Evander Kane. On the last show, we talked about his injury and the terrible timing of it and kind of how gruesome and unlucky and unfortunate it was. We now know, 1, he's going to be okay, which is great news. 2, it's 3 to 4 months. So he's going to be back in time before the regular season ends. So it's going to feel like an NHL trade deadline addition. But it creates a little confusion or complications because the Oilers can't just go out and add a bunch of salary and then hope that they can bring him in and have all this room. It's not like they can pull a Nikita Kucherov, which I think we might have sort of mentioned in the past. Is that possible? There's a lot of talk about the Oilers still maybe going out and getting somebody despite all of this. So Mike Johnson of TSN's got them linked to maybe Patrick Kane or Vladimir Tarasenko. There's other people looking at a few different options. I'll let you go first. You going to shoot this down or thumbs up it? Like, are you going to go, yes, the Oilers are going to go get somebody, or no, there's just no way that's happening?
I mean, of course, I would love to see them go out and get a Patrick Kane. Like, that would be exciting for so many reasons. I just don't see how it could work cap-wise. Like, Holland would have to do something extremely creative, and I don't think we've really seen that from him like we have from certain other GMs around the league that can get really kind of creative with those 3-team trades and retaining salary and all that. So I don't see it happening. I do think that they will be able to make some sort of move this season, but maybe closer to the deadline. But again, like, and if it's someone like Kane or Tarasenko, like, of course, make that work if they can. But I think they're still more likely to look for defensemen. I just don't think, like you had alluded to earlier, like Campbell hasn't been good, but the blue line in front of him hasn't either. And I think that's kind of the biggest concern for this team right now in an area that they could use an upgrade in. So if they do make a trade at all this season, I think it will be for a defenseman.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say next. Like, even if they do go get something, and I don't know that they will, I mean, it might be something small, like some fourth line physicality or something, some depth that doesn't cost much more than 800 to 1.1, like maybe, but I don't see why you'd get a forward. It just doesn't make a lot of sense when you lose Evander Kane. So the first immediate reaction would be, well, get it forward, right? Because you need it. And I understand that, Warren Foegele's picked it up a little bit. We'll talk about him in a second, but like Jesse Puljujarvi hasn't done really squat. I mean, the analytics people still support him, but he hasn't done much this season. Kyler Yamamoto has done nothing and he's injured. So you kind of maybe need somebody short-term, and I get the thinking, but the blue line's the problem, even with the injury, that's kind of been the issue. The one name you could possibly move, I guess, and he's been out there this whole time, is Tyson Barrie, but after the game he just had, and the way that he's kind of played, I know people still rag on him because it's Tyson Barrie. He's not a defensive defenseman, but he's playing pretty good. So do you really want to trade him, knowing that you no longer would have who right now is the number one guy on your power play? Evan Bouchard maybe could take the role, but he's not been given those reins yet this season. So, yeah, I mean, if you're adding anything, are you adding a defenseman, and what kind of defenseman are you adding?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, like moving Barry just, I mean, that obviously would have to be a blue liner coming back in return, but then it kind of creates a bit of a hole, like you said, on the power play. Whether or not Bouchard is ready to step up into that role, I know there's a lot of Oilers fans that think he is, but it's kind of until you actually try him there, it's kind of hard to say one way or the other. And then if he doesn't and Barry's gone, then all of a sudden one of your biggest assets in your power play takes a big hit. So I do think that they still will look to add a defenseman. Obviously, I think the ideal thing to kind of make or get that money would be moving like a Puljujarvi or a Yamamoto, but I don't see a lot of teams kind of being interested with them unless they add a sweetener, which obviously isn't very ideal either. So I don't know what Holland does at this point. I think kind of stay patient right now and just kind of see how things play out in the coming months as the deadline approaches. And then maybe one of those two heats up and he's able to move them. But yeah, I don't think moving Barry at this point makes a lot of sense unless you're really confident in the defenseman you have coming back the other way.
Yeah, I don't think you can move any of those guys. Like, I don't think there was a market for Jesse Puljujarvi in the summertime, so I don't know why there would be one for him now. He hasn't produced anything. Kyler Yamamoto's, like I said, he's not 100%, so I don't know why anybody would pick him up. Warren Foegele has looked pretty good, and he's starting to come on, but why would you move him if that's the case? I guess if you're thinking, okay, well, let's trade him while he's got a couple goals because he's got one more year in his contract, but I suppose the Oilers could have tried to move that contract in the summer, and I'm not sure that they necessarily did. So I don't know who you trade. I think Tyson Barrie is the only player that another team might be in the market or have interest in, and I don't think the Oilers want to move him. I think there's also that chemistry that he has with McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, all those guys on the power play that expect Tyson Barrie to be there, right? And if he isn't there, I think that they might not be the happiest people in the world. That power play is too good. It's, I think, ranked second in the league. I don't know why you want to mess with that chemistry. It's basically McDavid and Draisaitl are awesome, but it's basically the only thing that is really consistent for Edmonton. Like it's the one thing you don't play with, right? Don't fix what isn't broken. And so the power play is not broken. And so why would you mess with it? And so I can't see them doing that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the players that have played pretty well here in recent, because we always talk a little bit about players who haven't played too well. But Warren Foegele, we mentioned him. He's starting to look good. We talked about how he's been grinding and he's been in there on that third line and really forechecking. And it looks like he's got pace to him. He looks like he's got the aggression, but he wasn't getting anything. Now he's finally getting some stuff. He scores one on a shorthanded. He gets a nice pass from Draisaitl on a second goal of the week, and he's starting to put some stuff in. How important is that for Edmonton? Like, they've got their five guys consistently getting them points, but they had Ryan McLeod at the beginning of the season. He's cooled off a little bit. Warren Foegele needed to step up. Like, how important is it that he's done that? And do you think he can fill in for an Evander Kane while Evander Kane is out?
Well, first, I think it's huge. Like, you've heard about it with the Oilers as well. I mean, for years, it was just that outside of McDavid and Draisaitl, they didn't have anyone that could put the puck in the net. Now they have added a bit more, but their bottom six, especially to start this season, has just been pretty well non-existent when it comes to scoring. So getting any contributions you can right now are huge. And I think what we've seen from Foegele as of late is kind of what you expected or what we kind of heard we were going to get when they traded Ethan Bear for him, kind of a guy that just does all the little things right. He's never going to put up huge offensive numbers, but chips in with secondary scoring, is solid defensively, quick to pucks, physical, all that kind of stuff. And it looks like maybe he's finally starting to kind of round into form. I think, like, after last season and his start this one, obviously his confidence had to have taken a bit of a hit. And I think it seems like he's a bit more comfortable now. And as far as replacing Kane, like, obviously, and you know this too, but it won't be nearly the same offensively. But I think if he's able to kind of just keep this up and at least kind of produce some secondary offense to support the big guns like the McDavids, Draisaitl's, Nugent Hopkins, that'll definitely help them just until Kane comes back.
Yeah, I think it was you that said last week that the kind of the sum of the parts is what the Oilers are going to have to do while Evander Kane is out, right? And that has to start somewhere. So if nobody else is picking up the slack, at least Warren Foegele's trying. He's getting in there. He's doing it. I really like the fact, too, that, and I think it was the game against Florida where he had a 2-on-1 with Draisaitl and he elected to pass it to Draisaitl. And then the two of them had a conversation very quickly. Then Draisaitl's like, you need to shoot that puck, man. Like, yeah, I know. Like, I almost don't know what obviously we don't know what he said, but you can kind of go, you could think to yourself, okay, Draisaitl maybe understands that the default play would be to give it to him. And he knows that people are going to try to give me the puck. Like anybody knows they'll try to give McDavid the puck whenever possible. But he's probably saying, dude, like, yeah, I'm Draisaitl and I'm pretty good, but you got to shoot there. Like you have an open opportunity to shoot. And he shoots the next time, right? He shoots a lot the next time and he happens to score. So, I mean, the fact that those conversations are happening and Draisaitl's working with him and trying to get him like, let's get you shooting, man. Like, let's get you producing some points. Let's get you on the board, get you some. That's good. Like, that's a really good sign. If they can get somebody else to chip in here too, I think that's going to be extremely important. Let's talk a little bit about kind of winners and losers. We used to do this all the time on the show. I don't know why we stopped doing it, but let's pick a winner. Let's pick a loser for the last, whatever it's been, a week since we've done the show. I'm throwing this on you. So do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
You take this one. Give me a sec to think.
Okay, well, my winner is going to be Tyson Barrie. We talked a lot about him. I do like a lot that he, regardless of the flack he takes from fans, because he's always going to take flack from fans. This is the way that it's going to be as long as he's here. He's going to be called the no defensive defenseman, but he's producing now. Like he's scoring goals, which is exactly what you need him to do. You expect he got 2 big goals in that last game to help the Oilers pick up a win. He needs to shoot the puck on the power play. You cannot always let McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nugent-Hopkins do all the work. So if Tyson Barrie becomes a threat to shoot, even if he doesn't shoot, but he shoots enough that you're like, well, he's going to shoot, and you don't know that he's not, that's important for the Oilers. If he pots one, that's even better. And he potted 2 and wicked, like booming shots too. So I think that's huge for the Edmonton because I think you need him to be a threat, even if he doesn't score. And he's like, I don't know what he is, but he's like 6th or something in defenseman for points or something, isn't he? So the fact that he's scoring and producing is huge. I think that's really, really big because I don't think you want a roster where Tyson Barrie is not effective because Bouchard is taking that step. I think you still need Barrie to be effective, and he has been. So I'm going to give my win to him.
Yeah, I think as far as winners go, I know we were talking about it earlier, but I think this goaltending situation, as kind of bad as it has been for Campbell and everything, I think that the attention on it would be a lot worse if Skinner was playing bad or even just kind of average. So I think he's really kind of helped deflect Campbell's struggles quite a bit in a certain way. So I'll give it to him, especially that last game that he had against the Panthers. He was just incredible. So I think I'll take him as the winner. And then I guess as far as a loser goes, if I would take one too, I think Brett Kulak's plays kind of disappointed me so far this season. I think I wasn't sure what to expect this season, but I thought he looked really good last year. Obviously, kind of a limited sample size, but I think we talked at the start of the year that maybe being put into a top 4 role early on might prove to be more than he could handle. And I think that's kind of how it's appeared. I don't know, all season long, I just don't think he's looked like the same player he was with the Oilers last year.
Yeah, I think the added minutes does creep up on him. I think he will probably get used to it, but it's still a lot more than he's used to playing. Hopefully he does get accustomed to that many minutes and he's able to pace himself and make some smarter decisions and stuff like that. But yeah, he's blown a couple tires just coming back on defense at times, and you're like, what the heck? And then, other decisions, things like that. So I'm thinking he'll round it out, but it would be nice if he didn't have to just eat so many minutes because he's just not used to it. I'm going to cheat a little on my loser. Not going to pick a specific person, but it is going to be something that I think is a real problem for Edmonton is their inability to stay out of the penalty box. They have not proven for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. If it's no Duncan Keith or if it's no, there's other people who are no longer on their penalty kill, like Chris Russell, for example, that aren't on this team anymore. And I think they were key penalty killers. I'm not sure if that's why the penalty kill has been so bad. It was okay in the last game, but they can't stay out of the penalty box for whatever reason. I don't know why. They just keep taking stupid penalties. And that is a real problem if you're not going to be able to kill off the penalties. And their penalty kill is not good. Like it's been very, very average, right? If not below average. So for whatever reason, it's gotten worse and they're taking more penalties, which is not a winning equation. You can't pick up the wins and, have your 4 lines roll or at least your 3 lines and change if you're constantly killing penalties. I think there was one where they played like almost half a period down. Like it's a regular occurrence with this team. I don't know why. They just taken more. Are you getting the sense there's more penalties being called? by the officials. Like there's been some crazy games where you're like,
Yeah.
what's going on here?
I mean, that one that comes to mind was I think it was that Chicago one where it was both ways. It was just like they're calling something. It seemed like, especially in that second period, like every 30 seconds, it was just they were letting absolutely nothing go. So I do think it seems like there may be a little bit more like kind of not letting things go as much, but at the same time, like they just got to be more disciplined. I think there's certain guys, even Evander Kane was one when he was in the lineup, that can take quite a few penalties. So I think there's quite a few guys that could, I guess, kind of not be as aggressive, because it's when they can't kill them, like that's hurting them a ton right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's been a problem. If they can figure it out and they can get their penalty kill kind of sorted, they'll be all right. But they got it. The key is just not taking so many. Like you're not helping yourself, and you're not helping. I guess and especially you got McDavid killing them now. Like, have you noticed that? Woodcroft's got him out there. Like it's because he's just trying to experiment with it, and it's great because McDavid's good at it. He's so fast. He actually creates opportunities shorthanded, but do you want him playing that much? Like there's always the block shot, the risk of injury. He's now playing more minutes than he ever has been. At some point, maybe the dude always wants to play, but like he's gonna get tired.
Oh, that's the thing too, is like, do you want him blocking a shot on the penalty killer, or would you rather him just kind of get out of the way and let it go by? Because I mean, obviously an injury to him would be just devastating to this team. So I mean, I get where Woodcroft's thinking with that, but I can't personally say I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably, to be fair, one of the better penalty killers in the league, because he's just so dangerous. Doesn't matter if it's 2-on-5. It's like, which isn't physically possible in a hockey game, but you know what I mean? Like he'll take on 5 people on his own. So he clearly doesn't need to worry about how many people are against him. But yeah, you don't want to play that many minutes and you're risking injury. It's just not the best equation for what could happen for him. All right. Well, you know what? I don't know. Is there anything else we need to talk about here? Is there any topics that we should cover that we did not? It's just like I said at the beginning, it's sort of a slower week for the Oilers. Not a whole lot of action happening here. We're just sort of waiting on the game tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I think next week, hopefully, we'll have a bit more to talk about and kind of see how they continue playing without Kane, like what their offense is like and everything like that. But yeah, it's kind of a quiet week right now.
Well, hopefully we got somebody who stepped up a couple times and we get the chance to talk about him in a positive way, because they do need, at least 1 or 2 more people. I'm hoping McLeod kicks it back in. He's been aggressive and skating like crazy, but he was on a little roll scoring there for a bit and has kind of slowed down. So hopefully that kicks back in. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate you coming back on, having a chat with us again. For everybody else, it's been another edition of Oilers Overtime with the Hockey Writers. Check out all the other content on the YouTube channel. Go to thehockeywriters.com and check out the news and rumors, the reports on the Oilers, and all of the articles there. And until next time, we'll talk to you then.